A very good evening, everyone. Welcome you all to yet another enlightening Pan India Journal Club session. Today, we are going to delve into a very interesting study on plant based diet and gestational diabetes mellitus, which is a systematic review. Next slide now. So, before we move on, a short introduction about our organization. So, Physicians Association for Nutrition is an international organization with a mission to center evidence-based nutrition and center of healthcare. So we provide guidance to policymakers and industry players to designing strategies and products. We involve the international medical community in activities for furthering know-how on health eating environment and food system. And we also create public awareness, educating public through community outreach activities. Next slide, ma'am. So this is our leadership board. Next slide, ma'am. So here is our Medical Advisory Council. This is our Pan India Journal Club team headed by Dr. Sindhura ma'am. So our PAN team was a very strong structure built on the contributions of medical professionals. So program manager, ambassadors, volunteers form the backbone of our organization. So are you a medical student, a medical professional, or a healthcare professional passionate about nutrition? Team Pan India welcomes you all. We encourage you to join us as ambassadors or volunteers or in any other capacity that aligns with your expertise. Together, we can make a difference in healthcare, in nutrition healthcare of India. Next slide, ma'am. So this is our presenters for today, Dr. Melinda, myself, Srinidhi, and Sulaiman. Next slide, ma'am. So, Dr. Sulaiman, could you tell us what is gestational diabetes mellitus? What are its risk factors and what are its causes? And what this particular study aimed to investigate in this regard?
Thank you so much, Srinidhi, for the introduction. Again, a warm welcome to everybody to this journal club. So, as you can see, the topic for today is an effect of a plant-based dietary patterns on the risk of developing gestational diabetes mellitus. So, previously, we've already conducted journal clubs on the effect of dietary patterns on diabetes. So, you can always refer to them, which are recorded on our YouTube, and refer those. And we found a need to realize that gestation diabetes is quite prevalent over India. As you'll be seeing in the further slides, I will be showing the prevalence of gestation diabetes in India too. So we realized that we need to understand and spread awareness more on the dietary patterns which are being followed during the course of gestation diabetes to reduce the risk. So primarily focusing initially before we go in depth into the paper that speaks today. So let's first understand what gestation diabetes in proper. Brief recap of what it is. So by definition, it per se says that gestation diabetes is any degree of glucose intolerance with an onset of first recognition during pregnancy, primarily in a mother which was not suffering from diabetes. So it is, to be more specific, in the second and third trimester of the pregnancy, and it's also marked insulin resistance, which can be secondary to placental hormonal release. There are various causes for gestation diabetes, multiple reasons, although not entire or still established. But then focusing and limiting ourselves to the dietary patterns, so let's better understand these. So now here we've shown it in two ways: Mediterranean dietary pattern and a Western dietary pattern. Mediterranean patterns is characterized by a high intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grain cereals, and this was indicated to cause a lower risk of gestation diabetes. However, as you see a Western dietary pattern, which is characterized by processed foods, high intake of red meat, and canned foods, and a lot of processed items in it. So this was indicated to cause a higher risk of developing of gestation diabetes. And it is also confirmed that a plant-based dietary pattern is beneficial and also reduces the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Now coming to the risks that gestation diabetes can possess. So offsprings which are delivered by mothers who've been suffering from gestation diabetes, so these are more likely to have reduced insulin sensitivity and pancreatic beta cell dysfunctions when they grow up. And since we all know that maternal dietary patterns have an effect on the placental growth, on the fetal growth, this will in turn, in the long term, affect the health of a newborn. Now the question arises, what can we do since we've understood a little bit and the recap of what gestational diabetes is? So, in again coming to the topic of today's paper, we aim to investigate that effect of a plant-based diet on the development of gestational diabetes. So, this is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So, primarily, for what happens if you follow a plant-based diet? So, this is a natural question that might arise: is that a plant-based diet compared to a non-plant-based diet is going to have more amount of carbohydrates, but then and it might be a natural question that higher carbohydrates might cause diabetes. But then research has shown that a high carb diet can reduce the risk of gestational diabetes and results in better glucose management for women who have the condition. Moreover, let's have an overall look at this because not just carbohydrates up there in a plant-based and a non-plant-based diet. There's also significant amount of fat and proteins which are here in this. An increased fat intake in a low carbohydrate diet, which specifically has a saturated fat as present in animal products like meat, eggs, and dairy, causes an increased insulin resistance, which overall inhibits receptors and causing inflammation throughout the body. Now, next slide. We also have to emphasize on the fact that fiber, which is found in carbohydrate-rich plant food, is significantly impacting the blood sugar management and gestational diabetes risk. So rather than us restricting the amount of carbohydrates and thinking that carbohydrates can indicate to having a risk of gestational diabetes, let's focus on the fact that having a high fiber diet with a plant-based diet in which is present a plant-based diet can include all foods which are present, for example, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains, fruit, vegetables. So although on the right side of the slide we can see common high fiber foods, but then although avocados, raspberries, blackberries might not be in our sorry might not be in the daily plate of us Indians, but then we can see that split peas, coconuts, pears, broccoli, lentils are quite common in our daily usage. Next slide. And since although we cannot entirely negate the fact that having a plant-based diet will completely eradicate the risk of gestational diabetes, but then we can surely say that it has been shown to reduce the risk. And a plant-based diet should not be mistaken for the one which I show on the left side of the image. A plant-based diet does not mean that anything which is derived from plant-based is going to be healthy. A plant-based diet is rich in fiber, will significantly impact the risk of developing gestational diabetes. And a plant-based diet which has whole food ingredients, which is full of vitamins, minerals, and has a lot of nutrients, compared to a diet which consists of which is also plant-based derived, but then it's got a lot of processing such as biscuits, fries, and cheese, and all of this. It's got a lot of processed food, which is not healthy when it cannot be considered as a plant-based diet. And on the right side of the slide, you can see the prevalence of diabetes. So gestational diabetes throughout India. As we can see that it is a significant number of mothers who are suffering from gestational diabetes. If we zoom into this, we can see that 20% nearly overall average in India, mothers are suffering from gestational diabetes. So it's quite a high time that we raise awareness on the type of dietary patterns that we follow and its implication on gestational diabetes. So this comes to the closure of my introduction. So before we proceed here to make this a little more interactive, we'll be sending a few poll question over here. The first question, which states, it's I think we've got it in a chat box.
Yes, Solema, it's there.
All right. So if anyone can answer them, it'll be great. So let's move on to the next part of this thing. Trinity, I think you'll be continuing with this. I'd
Yeah.
like to hear on what were this is systematic review and a meta-analysis. So what guidelines were followed and what databases were used to emphasize on the importance of this particular paper that we've chosen? And also, was the plant-based diet followed during pregnancy, and how many of those were followed prior to pregnancies? And if there was any methodology being used for any bias sensitivity analysis in this meta-analysis. So we'll let's have hear from what Srinidhi says. Thank you.
Thank you, Suleiman. So now I'll be taking you through the methodology and the results of this, and I think I'll be able to answer Suleiman's questions. So next slide, ma'am. So this study was a systematic review that followed the PRISMA guidelines. The investigators have searched 6 major databases like PubMed, Embase, etc. from inception to November 2022. They have synthesized the study results using fixed or random effect models in accordance with the data's heterogeneity, and also to make sure that the findings are reliable and valid. They have performed subgroup analysis, meta-regression analysis, and sensitivity analysis. Next slide, ma'am. So now let's see what are the major findings of this study. So first of all, let me give you a short summary of the characteristics of the study that was included in this review. A total of 32,006 women were included within a BMI range of 20.4 to 25.8 kg per meter square, and their age ranged between 26.7 to 32.3. The studies accounted for various confounders like BMI, age, and parity, and the studies were taken from diverse geographic locations like China, America, and various other countries. The plant-based dietary assessment was done during pregnancy in 8 studies and before pregnancy in 2 studies. Also, the dietary pattern was ascertained through predefined vegetarian diet, dietary indices, and factor analysis. Next slide, ma'am. So now discussing about the impact of BMI adjustment on plant-based diet and the risk of gestational diabetes mellitus, the investigators found that a higher adherence to plant-based dietary pattern was associated with a reduced risk of developing gestational diabetes mellitus, also with a stronger correlation before adjusting for BMI. Additionally, a plant-based diet defined as healthy substantially reduced gestational diabetes mellitus, while unhealthy plant-based diet showed a weaker reduction. Next slide, ma'am. So this forest plot here again depicts the impact of BMI adjustment on gestational diabetes mellitus and plant-based diet. Next slide, ma'am. So moving on to the quantitative exploration of plant dietary indices, the investigators have analyzed 4 records from 2 studies using plant dietary indices, and they have found that a greater adherence to plant-based diet was linked to lower gestational diabetes mellitus. Also, they found a significant linear trend, whereas the non-linear trend was not significant, as you can see from the p-value. And the plot here depicts the same. Next slide, ma'am. So coming to the meta-regression analysis, sensitivity analysis. So the findings were consistent in China and USA. There was significant association with plant-based diet defined by dietary indices. And in the meta-regression analysis, there was no significant variation in the relationship between plant-based diet and GDM risk across countries, methods, or periods. When we come to the sensitivity analysis, when they excluded a single study that did not show any significant influence on the overall effect size. When we come to the publication bias, there was a symmetrical funnel plot, as you could see, and that indicates no publication bias. And a question will be posted soon in the chat box. Do answer it. Now, I've been talking about a greater adherence to a plant-based diet reduce the risk of gestational diabetes mellitus almost throughout my part. So now, Sundraman, could you explain us what is the mechanism by which a plant-based diet is going to reduce the risk of gestational diabetes mellitus?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Srinidhi. So firstly, I would like to request all the participants to kind of please answer for the questions that have been posted in the chat box. Just give it a try if you can answer it. And firstly, I would also like to inform that this particular discussion part needs to be done by my colleague, Dr. Melinda. But unfortunately, because of some technical issues, she couldn't attend today. So I'm pitching in for her, and I'll be continuing with the discussion part. So this particular study, as already Dr. Suleiman and Srinidhi has already mentioned, it's a systematic review and meta-analysis where 10 studies of moderate to high quality involving 14 records have been included in this particular study. And they found that the greater adherence to plant-based dietary patterns is inversely associated with the risk of developing gestational diabetes. So basically, when we, it's not just following a plant-based dietary pattern. If we adhere to it, then they were able to find the reduction in the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Gestational diabetes. So if you look at the mechanisms, first let's understand, before moving into the mechanism, first let's try to understand in general what is plant-based dietary patterns. It is characterized by the high consumption of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, soy, and with abundant diet, which are rich in basically abundant dietary fiber and polyphenols, and also a low consumption of red meat and ultra processed foods, which are again going to increase the risk of gestational diabetes as well. But technically, if we talk about whole food plant-based diet, yes, it promotes just the consumption of only whole plant-based foods like whole grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, and all these things. Now, if you look into the mechanisms, how plant-based diet can help ameliorate gestational diabetes is by reducing the insulin resistance and inflammation. Because in gestational diabetes, the two most factors that are responsible are the insulin resistance and the low-grade inflammation. So when we try to counteract those two things, I think we'll be able to manage the gestational diabetes better. So if you look at the mechanisms, like a low-fat plant-based diet significantly improve the insulin resistance as well as beta cell dysfunction. And also, when we include whole food plant-based diets, that means a plant-based diet which is rich in dietary fiber. As Dr. Suleiman in his slides has already mentioned, just following a plant-based diet is not important. Following a healthy plant-based diet is what makes the difference. When we look into the healthy plant-based diet, it is very much rich in dietary fiber, and that dietary fiber is going to lead to, when that particular dietary fiber enters into our gut, it leads to the fermentation of the dietary fiber by our gut bacteria, which are going to produce the byproducts like short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids play a very protective role in strengthening our colonic barrier, regulating intestinal function, as well as reducing the inflammation as well. And when we talk about these short-chain fatty acids, one of them is the butyrate, which is going to enhance the protection against the inflammation as well as the diabetes via extracellular regulated protein kinase pathway as well. Now, again, here also you can see when we include the right kind of plant-based foods, healthy plant-based foods, which are rich in dietary fiber resistant starches, it is also which is like a prebiotic, what we are supplying to our gut. And when we include the probiotics, it's going to lead to all the positive benefits, whatever we have discussed right now. And when we include the Western diet, which is very much loaded with sugars and very low in fibers and other habits like smoking, alcohol, and frequent consumption of antibiotics is going to impact our gut bacteria, and that's going to lead to the side effects or increase our risk of developing gestational diabetes in a female who is trying to conceive or has conceived. And not only that, if we look at the study also mentions that the gut bacteria like Collinsella, Rothia, and desulfovibrio are related to the occurrence of gestational diabetes, where they have seen high amounts of these specific gut microbiota. And when we incorporate high dietary fiber-rich foods, that particular dietary fiber helped control the overgrowth of above mentioned bacteria and also promoted the short chain fatty acid producing bacteria by improving the overall fermentation process in the gut. So overall, we can say it's a promising strategy to prevent gestational diabetes by remodeling gut microbiota composition through the dietary modifications. And here you can also see that, when we talk about the short chain fatty acids, the butyrate, which can again be like an energy source for the colonocytes, which is going to improve the immune functioning of our gut, our gut, as well as it's also going to improve the antioxidant effect, reduce the inflammation, reduce the lipid deposition and the cholesterol synthesis. Overall, it's going to increase our insulin sensitivity, reduce the hypercholesterolemia and hepatic steatosis. And not only that, butyrate on the pancreas, it's going to improve the insulin secretion as well as reduce the glucagon secretion. And if we talk about the gut-brain axis, this butyrate can help in increasing the leptin production, making us feel more satiated. And also, as a result, our caloric intake and the food intake can also reduce, which can overall indirectly can impart in reduction in the weight gain, or which promotes a convenient way of weight loss as well. Now, from this study, we can see when the subgroup analysis based on different study countries were done, there was no significant relationship between gestational diabetes and plant-based diets in India, Australia, and Malaysia. But again, here only one specific study were done in the respective countries. But when they moved on to the method of dietary pattern assessment, a significant association between plant-based diets and the lower risk of gestational diabetes was noted. That too, when they have ascertained to the healthy plant-based dietary indices. And when they have done this period of dietary investigation, they have also noticed that the risk of gestational diabetes decreased when the adherence to the respective plant-based diets have increased during the pregnancy. They have also noticed that before the pregnancy, if they follow the plant-based diets before the pregnancy also, they have seen a considerable result. But more than before pregnancy, during the pregnancy period also, when they have adhered more to this respective plant-based, healthy plant-based diets, they have seen a lot of reduction in the risk of developing gestational diabetes. So a lot of inverse proportionality can be seen. Likewise, as already Dr. Suleiman has mentioned in the initial slides, like not all plant-based diets are beneficial. Okay, so when we talk about plant-based diets, for example, if we take any French fries or anything, they can also come under plant-based diet, but technically they're not healthy plant-based diets. So what we need to be focusing here to impart the benefits of the plant-based diet are healthy plant-based diets, which fall under the healthy plant-based dietary index. So most importantly, when we talk about, he has also mentioned in the initial slides that when we talk about plant-based diets, yes, they're slightly high in carbs, but even in those high carb diets also, they have noticed that the risk of gestational diabetes was less only when we focus on the quality of the carbohydrates. So how can we focus on the quality of the carbohydrates is by looking into their glycemic index, glycemic load, and the dietary fiber content. When we focus or try to incorporate more low glycemic index foods, or the overall, if at the end of the day, when we try to get a low glycemic load diet, and when we try to include more amount of dietary fiber rich foods, at least getting those, minimum that 30 grams of fiber per day is essential. So when we try to focus on this quality of carbohydrates, definitely they're going to be beneficial. If you look at some of the plants with high glycemic index like potato, rice, refined bread, what exactly these high glycemic index foods do? They basically are going to shoot up our blood sugar levels quickly. So sharp blood sugar spikes can be seen, which can lead to increase in glycemia level because of the low carb quality. And Lumen et al., they also found that low carb diets, when we, for example, if someone is following based, okay, because carbs are responsible for the increase in the blood glucose levels. Now, when they go for low carb diets, obviously, if they are associated with high fat and high protein, coming basically from the animal-based foods, they have seen a positive association, the risk of developing gestational diabetes. But at the same time, when women, they consumed high fiber and fruit intake, which are rich in, where they're focusing the right quality of the carbs, they have noticed that there is decreased risk of developing gestational diabetes. Likewise, when we focus on the cereals also, we need to be focusing on the whole grains rather than more refined grains, because refined grains or refined cereals also increase the risk of developing gestational diabetes. So overall, if we look at the risk, the pre-gestation low carbohydrate diets, that is before conceiving, if they follow low carb diets, with an inclusion of high protein and fat predominantly coming from the animal-based foods, that is going to increase the risk of gestational diabetes. And someone who is consuming higher amount of animal protein also, we can see the risk of gestational diabetes is increased in them. And in individuals who consume low carb diets with high protein and fat coming from the plant-based foods, technically the risk of gestational diabetes has been decreased, and that is what has been noted in the study. And when their plant protein is basically, when their protein is basically coming from the plant-based foods, the risk of GDM also has been reduced. And Satija and team classified sugar-sweetened beverages, sweets and desserts, refined grains and juices as relatively unhealthy plant-based diets. So basically what we see here are like more refined sugars. So refined sugars basically belonging to high glycemic index category, which are going to just shoot the blood sugar spikes up. And these food groups were related to a higher risk of gestational diabetes. Here you can see beautifully, they've mentioned how high maternal fructose diet is going to lead to abnormality in the gut microbiota, obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, insulin resistance, all because the proposed mechanisms is when we try to consume these kind of high fructose diets, it's going to lead to oxidative stress, epigenetic regulation, and all those things can occur, leading to the potential side effects. Now, if you look at how does the sweetened beverages can lead to the risk of gestational diabetes. So just because again, as we can see, looking at, just give me a second.
हाय ग्लायसेमिक लोड वाला हे सगळं आहे रिअल ज्यूस आहे सगळेच
Okay. All right, I've muted. Now, if you look at these sweetened beverages, so a lot of people just, normal lay person can just looking at those names that have been printed on the nutrition, on the package, they feel like it's more, rich in fruit and it's a very healthy option. But technically it doesn't have to be because they're just loaded with sugars and all of those things. Now, if you look at why these sweetened beverages can increase the risk of gestational diabetes, because they have higher glycemic load. And these higher glycemic load foods, they may lead to increased weight gain, as well as they also reduce the satiety, because even if you drink a glass of this particular juice also, you'll not feel satiated, and you end up getting more hunger pangs or hunger signals will be there, which are going to disrupt the metabolism by affecting the neurochemical changes in the brain. And not only that, milling and squeezing during the productive process of refined grains and juices, they're going to reduce the dietary fiber and bioactive phytochemicals, then potentially lowering the dietary quality as well.
It is not static. It is dynamic, evolving with the changing times.
So in the systematic review, suggested that controlling weight may also be a pathway through which plant-based diets reduce the risk of developing gestational diabetes, because if you have seen our previous diabetes videos, we have Journal Club session videos, we have clearly mentioned how plant-based diets can help in reducing the body weight in a more convenient, comfortable, and also sustainable way. Where it's much more sustainable, economical, and it's also much more convenient way also. So if we come to the strengths and the limitation of this particular study, so when we talk about the strengths, yes, very large number of cohorts has been included, high quality studies are included, and synthesized plant-based dietary patterns defined by multiple analytic methods are involved, and further subgroup analysis, meta-regression, sensitive analysis, and dose response analysis were also included. Now, when we talk about the limitation, so the measurement error can be a possible thing because the dietary patterns were estimated by self-reporting, and here only prospective cohort studies were involved. But again, this can also be a good pointer because retrospective studies are completely based on their memory and total recalling thing, where a lot of errors can be much more, the percentage of risk errors can be much more higher in those specific studies. And just the most important thing is gestational weight gain is not included in these specific studies. Now, if we move on to the final thoughts from this particular study, what all the pointers that we can take away, so let's look into it. So the findings from the study suggest that the predominant plant-based dietary patterns can be beneficial in reducing the risk of gestational diabetes, potentially because the plant-based diets are rich in antioxidants, fiber, and various beneficial micronutrients, which can help in improving the glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity. And most importantly, what we need to do is not just including plant-based diets, we should also be focusing on the quality of the plant-based diets. So when we focus on the healthy plant-based diets, only those are associated with the lower risk of gestational diabetes, and not every plant-based diet, because every plant-based diet is not equal. So emphasizing on low consumption of red meat and ultra-processed foods or avoiding them is very, very important. And managing body weight and gestational weight gain may also be one of the important pathways through which plant-based diets exert their protective against protective effects against gestational diabetes, because to improve the insulin sensitivity, cutting down the body weight is also equally important, and plant-based diets can help in better achieving those weight loss goals. And from another study, we also found that every 10 grams of fiber addition per day, additional other than these 25 to 30 grams, when we add extra 10 grams of fiber per day, it's going to increase in one's diet. It can result in a 26% reduction in the risk of gestational diabetes. And one more study from Harvard, it also found that women with highest intake of animal protein pre-pregnancy, they had a 49% increase in gestational diabetes risk, while women with highest intake of vegetable protein had a 31% reduction in the gestational diabetes risk. Also, in one more study, they also showed a 61% increased risk for every 1 serving of red meat that is consumed daily, and a 64% increased risk for every serving of processed meat. So if you look at some of the food groups that needs to be included into your, into the diet of a pregnant woman or who is trying to conceive on a regular basis to kind of reduce the risk of gestational diabetes or to manage the gestational diabetes better, are these beautiful 5 food groups like whole grains, legumes, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds are a must to be included on a daily basis. Now, when we, here are a couple of sample plates of the plant-based diets. You can look into this. So this is a snack plate just loaded with green lettuce, almonds, peanuts, mixed seeds, cherry tomatoes, which almost contain approximately the snack plate bowl has around 12 grams of protein. Here you can see a beautiful salad with a protein-rich dal curry and also spinach. Now, overall, if we talk about from the above study, we came to know that yes, inclusion of plant-based diet, adherence to the plant-based diet can definitely reduce the risk of gestational diabetes. And from our previous Journal Club sessions, we can also say that yes, in adherence to the plant-based diets can help even reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, and it's much more sustainable as well. But this plant-based diet not only offers the health benefits for the human, it also has some other additional additional benefits pertaining to the environment and planet as well. So when we shift our meal plates more towards the plant-based foods, we can reduce the carbon footprint, which can also help in environmental conservation. And as a result, we can improve our planetary health. When the planet is healthy, I think with we can easily say that we can also stay much more healthy. So in short, we can say that plant-based diets, specifically whole food plant-based diet, when you include the right kind of plant-based diets, they are not only human healthy, but they're also planetary healthy. So thank you. And I would like to end my part with one of the most important statement. If it is coming from a plant, you eat it. If it was made in a plant, please don't.
Thank you, Sindhura ma'am. Ma'am, there was a question put up in the chat box for any suggestions on a pre-diabetic. So we would like to hear a little more on a generalized solution for that.
Okay. Okay, hi. Okay, so good to connect with you all. Recently, my blood report shows that I'm pre-diabetic. Please advise me what kind of food I can take. So definitely, Annie. So here I would say, so since you're a pre-diabetic, it's a stage where, a proper lifestyle modifications can definitely help you get back into your normal pace. So into your normal level. So the most important thing, as we have seen throughout the entire discussion, we have been mentioning that include the right kind of plant-based foods. So I would suggest to include predominantly plant-based foods. Okay, if you're a non-vegetarian also, please try to shift more towards your plant-based diets, and also include more of vegetables, okay, which are fiber-rich foods, because fiber plays a very, very important role in managing your blood sugar levels. One simple tip here I would say is, whenever you're starting your meal, always start with your salad or your vegetable curries and then move on to the other dal and rice or roti or these things. But again, one more simple tip I would say, in your meal plate, typical, if you look at our Indian meal plates, half of the meal plate would be filled with the grain portion only, right? Either rice or roti. So just try to make it into 1/4. Only 1/4 of your meal plate should be filled with that. Okay. So I think these two tips pertain to the dietary aspect is definitely going to help. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Annie. And also, I would like to, I would request all the participants to please answer the third important, interesting question that we have launched with a poll. Please try to attempt that. Okay, so there is another question. So what is the BMI cutoff for Asian women planning to conceive and to reduce the risk of diabetes? So technically, I mean, everyone knows if we talk about the WHO BMI levels, usually it would be for, I mean, like, for the global population, it's different. Okay. So technically, if we talk about the normal BMI of someone who is about 20, I mean, whose BMI is about 25, we say they are overweight. Only above BMI of 30, about 30, we say they are obese. But if we talk about the Asian population, for specifically the women who are trying to conceive, we have even more strict values for the Asian population because we comparatively have a higher body fat percentage. So the BMI cutoff values are going to be for, I mean, if the BMI is less than 18.5, yes, we say underweight. If it is 18.5 to 22.9 only, we say normal. I mean, for the global classification, it's going to be like 24.9. For our Asian population, it's 22.9. Now, 23 to 24.9 is considered as overweight. Now, about 25 for Asian population is considered as obese. Technically, globally, about 25 is overweight, but for Asian population, about 25 of BMI is considered as obese. Okay, I hope that helps, Dr. Akshita. All right. Okay, if there are any more questions, please do drop them in the chat box. We would love to address them. And also, please do let us know how you felt about today's session. Were you able to take away some good pointers? It was insightful or informative. Please do let us know so that your feedback is definitely going to motivate us to come back with even more interesting sessions. Please do let us know in the chat box, please. And I would also like to thank everyone for whosoever has attempted the polls. And I think most of you have guessed it right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, could you please share some food examples that can promote the production of short-chain fatty acids? So here I would say a simple, in a simple way, Josna, the foods, specifically the dietary fiber-rich foods are the ones which are going to promote the gut bacteria to produce short-chain fatty acids. And specifically, if you focus on the dietary fiber, like soluble fiber-rich foods like oats, it could be chia seeds, it could be legumes like peas, beans, apple, banana. So all these are rich in dietary fiber-rich foods, which are going to promote the production of short-chain fatty acids. Annie says it was very useful. Looking forward for many more continued sessions like this to address the issues. Definitely, we will come with that, with more interesting sessions, Annie. And thank you so much for the lovely feedback. Okay, so Srinidhi, would you like to reveal the answer for the third third poll question? I think we got one right answer from Dr. Akshay. Thank you so much, Josna.
So I'll read the case scenario once, ma'am. So Emily, a 30-year-old woman in her second trimester pregnancy. So she has a pre-pregnancy BMI of 23 kg per meter square and no significant medical history. And the important point here is her mother had gestational diabetes, so which makes Emily concerned about her own risk. So Emily consumes a diet that includes a lot of red meat, processed food, and sugary snacks, a typical Western diet. So her doctor has suggested that she consider a plant-based diet to help reduce her risk of GDM. So based on the findings from the systematic review, which specific component of a plant-based diet is most beneficial in lowering the risk? So can we have some more answer before we reveal? So the answer is basically a high fiber content found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Why? Because it helps to improve blood sugar management and insulin sensitivity, as we have discussed in the discussion part.
All right. So would you also like to reveal the answers to the first two poll questions as well?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So the first question. So according to the study, which type of dietary pattern has a significant association with high risk of developing GDL? So it's the very obvious Western dietary pattern. I think most of them answered correctly. The next question, which type of plant-based approach helps in managing gestational diabetes? So again, plant-based diet and whole food and nutrient dense. The next question, the current study of discussion belongs to which type of research study? It's the systematic review. I think everybody has answered correctly.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So, all right, just one more message. Yeah. Thank you so much, Supraja, ma'am. That means a lot. Thank you. So yeah, with this, we'll be ending today's session and we'll be coming up with a brand new topic. Probably in October, we'll be coming every alternate month. We'll be launching the Journal Club sessions. So till then, take care. Bye-bye. And thank you so much for taking time out and joining. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.